Good evening. This is Ron Freeman with Special Olympics Maryland. We're going to get started in about 2 minutes. I'm going to start on time because we have a pretty packed set of slides to go over, and we have another webinar following for the bocce competition immediately following this one. So we will certainly be wrapped up by 8 o'clock and hopefully a few minutes before that this evening. So we'll get started in about 2 minutes. I do want to remind everyone that, and once we get started, I'll remind again, this webinar is recorded. If you have a question, if you through the window, raise your hand. We have someone moderate. Kendall Zeswitz is moderating the webinar this evening. So if you have a question that you'd like to answer immediately, raise your hand and we'll address it then. Otherwise, we'll hopefully have some time at the end of the webinar for other questions. Okay, I have 7 o'clock. We're going to get started, so we keep conscious of your time and we finish on time for the next webinar. Again, I'm Ron Freeman, Special Olympics Maryland, and this is the athletics pre-competition webinar. So if you're an hour early for bocce, certainly welcome to stay and listen for this. But this is the athletics pre-competition webinar. And to move to, oh, there we go. I was trying to get to the next screen. If you have a question, type it into the control panel, and the moderator, Kendall, will read it to the group, or raise your hand, and she'll acknowledge you, and we'll try to answer your question at that time. Or if you prefer to save your questions to the end of the webinar, we'd be happy to answer them at that time. Okay, here's our agenda. If you've been with athletics for the past few years, this is the same agenda that we followed for pre-competition for the last 6 years, basically. We are a couple of weeks out from summer games, so a lot of the things that you'll see tonight are still tentative, but this is our best guess as to how things will pan out in 2 weeks on the 8th, 9th, and 10th of June. For our team, our management team for athletics, this is the same team as last year, except for, last year Dan Jarkowitz, who was our clerk of course for the track, was out last year due to a personal commitment. Dan will be back this year, and otherwise, everybody who has been so actively engaged in the athletics competition team will again be back for 2018. We have some lovely satellite views of the Towson area, clearly showing Loyola Blakefield, which you have no reason to care about this year because our swimming competition is back on campus at Towson University. Again, another satellite view of the area. And if that wasn't enough, here's a satellite view of the Cockeysville Middle School area where we'll be having some of our softball competition. Some of our teams, a limited number of teams, will be playing at the stadium at Towson University. Move on from that. Map of the campus. Once again, we've decided to have athletics at United Stadium, where it's been every year at Towson University. Here's a map, to get your basic understanding of where everything is. We'll go over a little bit later in the webinar where our track and field athletics folks can park. Venue map, again, same as last year. We will have the 3 vectors for our throws. We will, depending on the numbers, depending on the number of entries we have and how many volunteers we have, our anticipation is we will have the far vector available as a practice area. Okay, spectator stands, and we have a slide in a couple of minutes, but the spectator seating is the closest to the start lines and the finish lines for the side of the track. We have a slide in a couple, maybe the next one, about our tents. We are going to again ask our teams and families just to be considerate of others when you're placing your tents. We will have signs below which we're going to ask that you not place the tents. That gives maximum viewing ability to all of our families. If you put your tent too low, that sort of takes away the ability for anybody in 4 or 5 rows immediately behind the tents to be able to see it all. So we will have those signs placed along the stands at United Stadium, and we ask not only for you guys, but if you can remind your families as well. Okay, all of our tents and all of our staging areas are exactly the same as we've had in the past. As you come down the steps with the stadium on your right, the command center and volunteer tent will be immediately on your left, track staging just down the parkway here, just down the runway from beyond where the hurdles begin. So track staging will be field staging, catty corner to that over in this area, and awards in the same place, a little bit to the left or the right as you're looking at the scoreboard. The awards tent will be there. Hopefully, I think we've got confirmation that we will have the misting tent again from the fire department back over in this area. Okay, this is a new slide and a new, not only a new slide, a new rule that we talked about in at the pre-season webinar, which we are instituting this year with these numbers for our athletic events. What we have determined that, for these fundamental events, the softball throw and the 50-meter race, that these particular events are intended for athletes of lower ability who are frankly unable to compete at the more standard events. So what we've done is trying to move those athletes into the more challenging events. So we have this criteria for the softball throw. If your athlete is throwing, for this year, our criteria is if your athlete is throwing more than 20 meters, or in the 50-meter race, he or she is running faster than 10 seconds. We're not asking. Those folks cannot be entered in those 2 events. They should be entered in either into to the mini jab, or if they practice and are comfortable with the shot put, they should enter that. And for the 50-meter race, if they're running faster than 10 seconds, they need to be in the 100-meter race. Athletes who earn better than those scores may be subject to disqualification. Okay, the updated schedule, we will show that schedule in the next slide. Our anticipation is that it's going to be very similar to last year. What we don't know until very close, until we get the numbers and who's entered in what events, is when the longer races are, the 1500, the 3K, and the 5K. And we sort of move those things around as the first events of the day in order to, if your athlete is doing 2 of those 3, hopefully we get those split between Saturday and Sunday. So the idea, based on those numbers and what athletes are doing which, our schedule, which you'll see in a second or two, can be modified, moving those two events around. Once again, the track will be open by 7:30 each morning for warm-ups and practice. We just ask that you be aware of the work that we need to do to, to set up different things, whether it's hurdles on Sunday or marking lines for slalom races on Saturday. Just expect that we may need to, to adjust where you are on the track. Okay, this frankly is last year's schedule, even with a 2018 date on it. But we anticipate that our day will look very, very similar to this. We are cognizant of trying to minimize the number of conflicts. Sometimes it's difficult to do that where there will be conflicts. What we ask at every competition every year is if your athlete has a conflict between track event and a field event, report, and we're going to keep track of that in paperwork. We either highlight or put a notation on the on our paperwork that this athlete has a conflict, but we ask that your athlete report to the track event first and get that that event done, and then report to the field event. We can work them in, to the second round of the field event, second go round of the rotation. But we do ask that all our athletes, if you have a conflict, go to track first, field event second.
Hey, Ron. John Crone just messaged and asked if you could move a little bit closer to the phone because it's harder to hear.
Sure. Okay. Friday night coaches meeting. All head coaches must attend the Friday coaches meeting. Other coaches are certainly welcome to come if they wish. The usual set of criteria will be handed out on Friday night: the bibs, badge backs, copies of your delegation roster, time sequence reports, staging credentials, photographer credentials, and any other miscellaneous materials that we feel is necessary for a successful meet. Copy of, as all of you returning coaches are very familiar with, a copy of our time sequence events and our badge backs so that we can run our events efficiently. Okay, this is not a new rule, but it's a new slide that we've not put in Summer Games webinar before, but it's become an issue for some of our events and has to do with coaching during the competition. It is not only contrary to the goals of Special Olympics because of the unfair advantage, but it is not permitted. We're going to hold very close to this rule this year. It is not permitted by the folks on this webinar, the coaches. It is also not permitted by family members, by anyone. So we're going to adhere to this very closely, and I'm just asking as a reminder for you to tell everyone in your athletics delegation, not only is it prohibited, but you are putting your athlete in jeopardy of being disqualified if this rule is not being adhered to. Okay, we showed the staging tents earlier, where they were. This is just the verbiage associated with that. We're asking that that the athletes must be in the staging tent a minimum of 15 minutes before the scheduled start of their event. You'll get those schedules on Friday night. The only folks who should be in the staging areas are the athletes, our athletics volunteers. Okay, and that's it. That's it. Okay, staging, and this is the rule that we've adhered to for many, many years. If your athlete misses his or her designated division or due to a competition conflict, we will make the effort to add the athlete to an appropriate heat or division later in the schedule. but it is possible or even likely that the athlete will not be able to be added to another heat or flight. So please adhere to the schedule, get your athlete there on time. If there's a conflict, we are certainly aware of that, and we can be flexible with those conflicts, but you need to get your athlete to the staging area 15 minutes before the scheduled start time of their race or throwing or jumping event. Oops. Okay, for staging, each head coach for every team will be issued 2 credentials that will allow one coach into the staging area for the sole purpose of assisting athletes with stretching or preparation for their upcoming event. Those credentials can be handed, between you and your assistant coaches at different times during the day. That's fine, but it is just 2 credentials per delegation. Relays. Once you get your relays entered into GMS, we'll try to get these relay rosters emailed with these schedules by Thursday night, so I guess it's June the 7th. On Friday, at the coaches meeting, we would like to have handed back to us any run order changes for, at the Friday coaches meeting. For the 4x2, which is a Saturday relay, we will, and for Sunday's relays, the 4x1 and 4x4. Changes in run order only must be back to me or to the control center by 10 a.m. for that day's events. Anything after 10 a.m., if we accept it, that team will only be considered for a participation ribbon, not for awards. We will, try to be flexible for medical scratches, but those medical scratches should, in fact, be medical scratches, not not something where the athlete or you just decide, I'm going to substitute this athlete for that for any number of other reasons. We'd like to keep this running freely and hold true to those 10 o'clock deadlines, because it does involve some paperwork and a lot of copying that we need to run up to the control center to do. So as confident as you are on Friday night with your run orders, that will make our day easier for us to run our relays on Saturday and Sunday.
Hey, Ron, I have a quick question from Kathy. She asked if a conflict in the past coach has met at finish line, not awards, so as to get the athlete to the field staging, will that now be done by the volunteers?
Well, we will try to identify the conflicts, and if at the finish line we know that there's a conflict, that athlete needs to go immediately to a staging area or to a throwing event or a jumping event, we will have those athletes go right there, not back to staging, and they'll pick up we will hold their awards for the running event over at the award area. So they will be awarded later. We will, I'm not sure that exactly answers the question, as opposed to the coaches taking the athlete. I have to think about it a little bit. We'll probably come up with an answer later. My guess is that our volunteers will be taking the bulk of the athletes immediately over to awards, and the coaches may, in fact, need to take their athlete to their field event. Again, relays, and we have another slide. I think it's a slide following this, and this little line here that shows the fly zone. A little bit different in the USATF rules that govern our event. We'll talk about it in a second. But general rules, if your runner impedes another team, even after they've completed their exchange, the team will be DQ'd. So hopefully you've coached your runner to stay in the lane that they're in when they've completed their leg of the relay until they're instructed by the marshal to leave the track. Again, and we'll emphasize to our exchange zone marshals and umpires, when your athlete comes out for the 4x2 and for the 4x1, and for the 4x4 too, frankly, we will show the athlete the beginning and the end of the exchange zones. We'll show them where the middle of the exchange zone is. But if you coach your athlete to be at the beginning of the end, beginning or the end of the exchange zone, that's fine. We will show your athlete the beginning and the end and where the middle is, and we'll start him off in the middle, but he or she is free to be anywhere that you have coached him to be. Last couple of points. 4x4, we will be running with a one-turn stagger. Teams will be able to cut into lane 1 at the break line. The 4x1 and the 4x2, as we've run in the past, will be in assigned lanes throughout the race. Okay, this rule change for 2018, adopted by USATF, exchange zones. Starting this year, we no longer have a fly zone. In the past, the exchange zone was 20 meters from between the two big arrows, and the fly zone was 10 meters behind that. Starting with this year, in essence, our exchange zone is now 30 meters. There is no fly zone, so exchanges are illegal in this entire 30 meters. So again, I'm not sure how many teams it may or may not affect in terms of a fly zone, but in effect, we have no more fly zone. We have a 30-meter exchange zone. Just another, this is the same slide we had in the pre-season webinar. It's just showing, the old acceleration zone was this 10 meters here, but in effect, in reality now, this entire 30 meters is our exchange zone for the 4x2 and the 4x1. There's no change to the 4x4. Okay, every morning and throughout the day, anything that you need, any question that you have, please come by the athletics control tent. Either myself or Eva Tukolsky will be there, and several others will be there. Obviously, you need to show up there for anything you need to pick up at the start of the day or any questions that you have. Again, and we'll talk about protests in a couple of slides, but protest forms will be there at the Control Center, and we will post the results right along this wall as we have in the past. And again, if you are paged over the loudspeaker, this is where you need to come to unless you're asked to come anyplace different. But typically, if I need to speak to a coach individually, I will ask to meet you over at the Control Center. The weather, obviously it's a little bit too soon to get a forecast more than 2 weeks away, but just as a general rule, if it's only rain, we will continue the competition unless it's, number one, either a torrential rain, or we will certainly stop the competition for thunder and lightning. We will move into the arena through the doorway near the track staging and wait for the announcement to move. Number one, wait for the announcement to move to this location, and again, wait for the announcement that we are restarting the track meet. We will only be implementing this at the direction of the athletics director of Towson University. If we're instructed to do that, we will certainly follow the rules there, or in coordination with the rest of the SOMD staff. Do not assume just because it's raining that we're going to be doing anything unless you hear it over the intercom that we're delaying the track. We did it, I'm not sure, like 4 years ago, and when the rain has subsided, we picked up the track meet right where we left off. This is important. If we have rain, it's We will likely also be short of volunteers depending on the length of the rain delay. If we have this event, please try to be cognizant of your family members, anybody else in your delegation who can help us out if we need it. And we'll make that announcement. Let me go back to this slide. I can't remember if this was last year or the year before, when we had the anticipation and the reality of higher than normal winds. We may ask either through SOMD staff in cooperation and in agreement with Towson University that tents need to come down out of the stands. There will be no negotiation on that. If the tents need to come down, they need to come down. They present a danger to everyone. Just be cognizant of not only moving into a secured area, but if it's just windy, we may ask that the signs come down and stay down until we say otherwise. Uniforms and athletic attire, no change to previous years. Your athlete must be in proper uniform, otherwise they will be disqualified. That's athletic attire, athletic shoes. If your athlete is not in proper attire, we will not be holding up divisions for them to change. It's generally not been an issue, but we're asking you to check with this prior to checking into the staging area, but we will capture it, whenever we see it, hopefully at the staging, and your athlete will not be sent out to start the race or do their field event if they are not in proper uniform. Do you have any question about whether what your athlete is wearing is proper or not? Come see me before the day begins.
Hey, Ron, Levon has a question. Levon, I'm going to unmute your line now. It should be unmuted, so if you want to ask it.
The girls are always asking me what jewelry is permitted and what jewelry is not.
No loose jewelry, so no necklaces.
There it is. Sorry.
Nothing. Okay. It's just a safety issue, and we can't have those things flying. And Mike, if you're in line, I believe rings are okay. Certainly nothing around the neck. No headphones, nothing like that.
Yeah, Ron. Smooth rings are fine. Stud earrings are fine. Certainly medical ID bracelets are fine, but they should be taped down. Basically, as Ron said, anything that's loose, anything that someone else's or even the athlete's finger could get caught under. No track is not a contact sport, but those types of collisions do happen. And I've seen fingers practically ripped off of a hand because it gets caught on another runner's wrist or whatever.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, let us know beginning of the day if you need either guide rope or starting blocks. We can get those out for you. And we'll have the starting blocks there at Towson University starting blocks. We'll also have guide rope there, but it's helpful to know before the day starts so we can get those things out and ready for your athletes. I'm sure all of you know about about how we division. The rule for us, or for me anyway, as we look at the maximum effort rule, we're going to be looking at 25% difference in performance between entry and final events. Any protests, or let me stop there. If a protest is filed and we've made the determination that a violation of the maximum effort rule has occurred, you can see the possible consequences or results of that down here at the bottom. And it's generally not been an issue, but what I say every year, what you need to do is protect your athlete. I have no problem at all in ruling on protests. What we will not be, this is generally a protest rule, not necessarily a maximum effort rule. But if you are filing a protest, I will not be second guessing any of my marshals or field or people out on the track or the field for any judgment calls. But for maximum effort, protect your athlete. If there's a rule violation, please bring it to my attention. If it's a judgment call, more often than not, I have not seen whatever it is that you think happened out on the track, and I am going to be talking to either the people on the track or the people in the field events for their for what they saw and what they interpreted, and I will not be changing. If it's a judgment call, it's a judgment call. Okay, getting towards the end of our athletics specific slides. Competition entries, they're due in GMS. We still have a few days left. Today is the 21st, so we still have 3 days for competition entries. Chaperones volunteer applications, chaperones have to be entered into GMS by the 24th. Volunteer applications at headquarters by May 22nd. If you have a late qualifier or an in-house qualifier or whatever it is that you might have coming up in the next, within the next week, we will be accepting entry score updates for athletics until May 29th. Submit them either directly to me or to your regional sports director for improved scores only. No event changes, so you have up to the 29th to get those in.
Ron, just so that nobody's confused on this, that thing about that you have there with under the chaperones and volunteer applications at headquarters by May 22nd, that is only for new chaperones, not for anybody who's been registered previously. Everybody else who was brought over from the training time needed to have all their forms in a week ago. It was strictly for the chaperones. That's what your slide says. I just want to make sure that everybody heard that properly. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Okay. Protests. Just a couple of points that I didn't mention before. Protests need to be filed at our control center within 30 minutes of the posted results. We will put the time that it's posted as we put it up on the board. As in the past, probably for the last 5 or 6 years, only head coaches and athletes can file protests. So not parents, not your one of your assistant coaches, but for track and field, your athletes can file their own protests. But again, it needs to be either something we've done incorrectly with the rules, a maximum effort, not a judgment call. If you want to submit your judgment calls, that's fine. I can pretty much guarantee any judgment call I will be going with my marshals and officials. If we rule on a protest and you still disagree, you can appeal that decision, and those appeals of decisions need to be made by the head of delegation within 24 hours in the main control center up in the Minigan room of Unitas Stadium. Okay, everybody's familiar with the protest form. Put this in every year for Nixle text messaging communication system, how to sign up. For any notifications, you'll get a notification directly to your phone. Okay, we're going to be going through the remainder of these slides fairly quickly. These are the general slides, similar to the ones, or maybe exactly the same as the ones that will be in the head of delegation webinar. I believe that's later on this week. This is our general schedule for Thursday the 7th, Friday the 8th. Once again, we'll have our cheerleading competition beginning our day in the Towson Center, beginning at 10 a.m. And you can see on here, I'm not going to read through every line here. Our coaches meeting, actually, I don't remember. I think we are in the, I know we're in the United Stadium. Right now, I can't remember exactly which room we're in for athletics coaches meeting.
Ron, I think it may be the field view room again.
That's right. That's right. It is
I'm
the
not
field
sure
view.
if press is using that or not, but that's the one that's next to the control center and overlooks the track.
Yep. That's what's at least published so far, so I'm not sure if media will be using it or not. If there's any change to that, we will certainly get that out to everyone. Okay, our schedule for Saturday. Breakfast starts as early as 6 a.m. over in the Susquehanna Dining Hall. Our competition, it shows 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Actually, our competition, at least for athletics, we will have first gun at 8:30. We'll have national anthem at 8:20. So that's a little off. You'll have your ability to warm up on the track as early as 7:30. Sunday, same thing. We will begin with, depending on what longer races we have over at athletics, that may be the first race of the day. Otherwise, hurdles will be the first event on Sunday morning. Again, first gun is at 8:30. Again, this is for reference for your folks. This will be sent out to everyone for information about the opening ceremony, the block party, when the parade starts, and big red, bold, highlighted, need to know from each delegation by June the 1st, the total number of your delegation members at the opening ceremony, and importantly, the number of users of wheelchairs in the opening ceremony, and anyone else who might have a significant mobility challenge. You can send that information to your regional sports director. There's a number of slides here about transportation and bus schedules. Again, I'm not going to read through these. You'll get a copy of these slides tomorrow, and the webinar will be available. The recording of this will be available tomorrow too, for your reference for bus schedules. And we do have a slide a little bit further along where we need to park for our track and field competition. Again, another slide about transportation. And yet a fourth or fifth, or however many slides this is, about transportation, where the bus loops are, where the shuttles are, when the loops will begin to get our athletes to United Stadium. Okay, transportation notes. If for some reason we're delaying competition at the beginning of the day and we need to extend our day, rest assured that the shuttle service will be extended throughout all of our competition. All of our shuttles have wheelchair lifts, and they will be running all 3 days of our competition, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Here's the number for special on-campus needs for, paratransit transportation, the number that you'll need, and how much advance time you'll need to give that organization to get to where you need to be at the time you need to be there. This last slide, and we'll show another little slide, or this last bullet point. Lot 19, which is the lot next to Bocce, that lot will be closed for us. They will be the passes will be distributed to the head of delegations on site, and those passes will be based on the number of spaces available and the number of Bocce participants. Our folks, our coaches, our families cannot be parked in lot 19. Another place that we can't park as an athletic family is the loading dock right at the bottom of the United Stadium. We need to keep this open for our staff and management. Oftentimes throughout the day, we are in and out picking up supplies from different locations. So in addition to, and I'll show you on a visual in a slide or two where I'm referring to, that's usually not an issue, but it's the lot right at the bottom of, actually right across from lot 19. Okay, here's the stadium. Lot 19 and bocce courts are over in this area. That little storage parking area is right down in here. This area here is prohibited for us. That's going to be by parking permit only. We're asking that all of our athletics, families, coaches, teams, if you're not arriving to the competition by shuttle, that you park up on the hill in lots 13 and 14.
And Ron, just so folks know, there is a shuttle that will be stopping in lots 13 and 14 and will bring people around right to the entrance to the stadium. So okay. they can pick up that shuttle. You're not necessarily walking down that big hill or back up that big hill. Like I say, there's a shuttle that's running continuously around in a loop that you and your family members and such can pick up from there.
Right. Thank you. Yep. Okay. This is just a note about transportation at the end of opening ceremony. Actually, I'm not sure if this is different than what we've done in the past, but here's some information about how that will work. Okay, what everybody is anxiously awaiting is what the dance theme is. If you don't already know, the dance theme for this year's Saturday evening dance is Tropical Island. So, certainly want to have everyone dress appropriately for that. In addition, there'll be a number of other activities at Olympic Park, sports clinics, art activities. There will be a movie night on Saturday, or tentatively will be a movie night at Olympic Park. There will also be on Friday, as we've had in the past, a dance demo in the Potomac Room on Friday from 4 to 6 over at Potomac Room in the University Union. And again, on Saturday, I believe that's on Saturday, June the 9th, we'll have 2 open sessions of our Young Athletes program from 10 to 12 and from 1 to 3. If you have a chance to come over and take a look at that, it's for our athletes with and without disabilities, ages 2 to 7. So please come over and take a look at that. It's a really fun thing to do. Mackenzie Irvin, our Young Athletics Program Coordinator, will be headlining that on Saturday. The 180 games, which we've done, this will be the 3rd year, 4th year, I can't remember. We're still working on that. That will be, if you're not familiar, it's where we turn things around and we have relay races by our law enforcement personnel. Will be actually running 4x100 relays, and the officials and the timers and the starter are our athletes themselves. So our 180 refers to we're doing a complete 180 and having our athletes lead, run the games, and our law enforcement personnel be the competitors. We will likely have a small closing ceremony at the track immediately following the end of competition on Sunday, and we'll conclude with the last thing we'll do is the presentation of our pentathlon awards. For our athletes who will be participating in the USA Games, there will be a family briefing on Sunday at about 4 p.m. in the Potomac Lounge in the University Union. We will be finished at the track certainly by 4 o'clock. I'm not sure when our other competitions generally are finished. Probably everybody is done right around the same time. So at 4 o'clock, for families who have athletes who are going to USA Games in Seattle this summer, in athletics, bocce, softball, and swimming. Okay, we are at the final slide. Any questions that you have regarding anything we've talked about tonight, track and field related, athletics related, email me directly. If it's something having to do with your delegation or your area, and it's not necessarily track and field related, you can send your question to your regional sports director.
I am not seeing any. Oh, actually, Kathy has raised her hand. Kathy, your line should be, actually, you're self-muted. So if you, I think you're open now.
Yes, I just have a question. 21 parking. So I saw a few bullets on there, but there was no voiceover on that. Is lot 21 still open for parking?
Oops, didn't mean to do that. Mike, help me out. Actually, I'm not even sure what 21 is. That's the one over by Calvin Center?
21 is the lot, for those of you who aren't familiar with the different numberings, 21 is the lot that's adjacent to the Towson Center. It's where the Saturday night activities have been held. There is very limited parking there due to the setup for the evening activities on Saturday. So, I mean, you can try to get there, but it's going to get full very quickly on Friday with cheerleading and others. And again, we will have a shuttle running on Friday, so folks can park over in lot 13 and 14, the ones behind the stadium, and catch a shuttle, and it'll bring you right around.
Sorry, what about lot 20?
Which one?
Sorry, what was the last one?
20?
Lot 20 also will be very limited because they'll be setting up for the on Friday at least, because they'll be setting up for the Friday opening ceremony activities. There will be some limited space there on Saturday and Sunday. We have to have enough space open for a bus turnaround.
Is it last year?
It should be similar to last year. There's a little bit of construction going on at the end of it that may or may not impact some of the spaces. But there will be some limited space there. Actually, I'm glad you asked that. Just as a reminder to folks, because we don't want to, but we will be towing cars. Do not park on the road that runs up alongside the CQ Arena, the one where the bocce fields are down to your right, and you're going up into lot 20 up towards the softball field. There is no parking
right here.
there. So yeah, if you're right where your cursor is, Ron, if you go down and to the left, it's that road that's going up, the other down. So
yeah, this down.
Yeah, but to the left. So alongside the building into the lot 20, which is
okay. Up
there you go, right there. That road right there. Yeah, do not park on that road. That is a no parking area, and your car will get towed. Probably without getting announced. So please don't, ruin your own day. It'll be your own darn fault, or your family's own darn fault, if you do that. Similarly, parking in any non-official parking area or non-designated parking area will cause you to be towed. So, Kathy, hopefully that answers your question.
That does. Lot 20 the same. Got it.
That is the plan at this point. Again, with a lot of construction that's going on, something could change. Of course, we'll share that with your heads of delegation and via email if we find out anything different. One thing I did want to say on a different topic, but I know, Ron, you touched on it, but just really want to emphasize it with folks because it is a change from last year or from all the years. The exit criteria that we have for the 50-meter dash and the softball throw, again, those are, as Ron put it, fundamental events. We've had a history of some areas entering athletes who, quite frankly, are just inappropriate for those events. If someone can chuck a softball 20 meters, there is no reason in the world why they should be in a fundamental event. If they can run a 50-meter dash in 10 seconds or faster, actually I would say 15 seconds or faster, but the cutoff we're doing is 10 seconds or faster. There is no reason in the world why you would enter them in a 50-meter dash. That's way below what their ability is. You've got a few days to adjust their events. I did notice during the qualifiers leading up throughout the season that several athletes were entered in those events with times that are or distances that are beyond those criteria. We told everybody at the beginning of the season. It went out in several communications. It went out to area directors repeatedly. So if they're entered in that event, we're going to scratch them or delete them before they even go. And if they throw the softball more than 20 meters, they're going to be disqualified. If they run the 50 faster than 10 seconds, they're going to be disqualified. That'll be your fault or the coach's fault, whoever entered them in that, because you've been warned, you've been told ahead of time, and the athletes just plain and simple shouldn't be in those events that are for really, quite frankly, very much lower ability athletes. So we're pleased that most areas are already doing that, but take a look at your scores, take a look at your entries, change them while you got a chance. And I'm not talking about changing the entry time so they don't get eliminated, but get them in the right event. And I know it's late in the season, but everyone was told this months ago, and I know it's a big change, but and it's going to that criteria is going to get tighter and tighter. We're eventually going to get that the softball to either 15 meters or 10 meters as the cutoff, and the track the 50-meter dash to it's like either 12 or 15 seconds. I forget which. So again, everybody's been notified. If I get a complaint or we get a complaint from a family member, quite honestly, we're going to tell them that their coach made a mistake in entering them in that event, and that the coaches were notified of this. So please don't put us or yourself, quite frankly, in an embarrassing situation, and don't put your athlete in a situation that he or she really shouldn't be placed in. They should be in events that match their abilities. So I'll get off my soapbox, but just want to be sure everything that there's no lack of clarity around this for those two events. So thank you.
Is there a question about healthy athletes? Is that what I'm seeing here?
Yes, and I did answer it for Jessica, but if you want to share with the group, you can do that as well.
Yeah, we're not doing healthy athletes at Summer Games this year. We're going to have a standalone event at Towson University in September. I believe that date, I don't have the calendar in front of me, is that the 23rd?
22nd.
Like that, 22nd, Saturday, 22nd of September at Towson University, and there will be many more details coming out. Probably no details before Summer Games, but put that on your calendar. We will be doing Healthy Athletes as a standalone program in September at Towson. Are there any more questions? If not, I want to thank you all for taking your time this evening to listen in on our athletics webinar. We will get these slides out tomorrow, post the video, and get that out to everyone as well. So thank you very much, and I hope everyone has a pleasant rest of the evening, pleasant Memorial Day, and see you all in just a little over 2 weeks. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron.
Okay, good night.